I still remember the way Mom's face lit up the moment my sister Jessica walked through the door. I was 8 at the time, sitting cross-legged on the living room floor with a crayon-stained notebook in my lap, proud of the little comic strip I had just finished. "You made this?" Mom asked, smiling at Jessica as if she had personally drawn it herself. Jessica just shrugged and flipped her hair, the kind of effortless movement that made everyone around her forget she hadn't lifted a finger. "It's okay, I guess," she murmured, with the kind of feigned humility that Mom ate up. "And what about you, Lily?" Dad asked absent-mindedly from the kitchen, stirring his coffee. "Do you want me to hang this thing on the fridge?" He gave me a weak smile, the kind that felt like a consolation prize. I forced one back, my heart sinking. Mom didn't even glance at my notebook. This wasn't new. It had been this way forever. Jessica was born 2 years after me, and from the start, she was the golden child. Smart, beautiful, perfect, Mom would whisper to neighbors while I sat quietly in the corner, trying not to be noticed. Even at 5, I knew I was invisible in my own home, overshadowed by a sister who seemed born to take the spotlight and destroy anyone who threatened it. By the time I was in middle school, Jessica's cruelty had become more obvious. She would convince Mom to let her have my clothes under the guise of sharing, only to smear chocolate on my favorite shirt when I wasn't looking. She once told me to stop being dramatic when I cried, then ran to Mom to warn her that I was being unreasonable. Mom would sigh and say, "Jessica's just trying to help, sweetie. Don't take it personally." I stopped trying. High school was worse. Promposals, awards, college acceptances. Jessica always got the highlight reel. I remember sitting in my room the night she got her first scholarship to NYU. She flounced past my door, tossing her acceptance letter on my desk like a taunt. "Oh, don't worry, Lily. You'll get your turn someday." Her laugh echoed down the hallway. I picked up the paper, staring at the cramped handwriting of my rejection letter, wishing I could disappear. Even friends noticed it. "Your parents act like she's some kind of celebrity," my best friend would whisper. "And you're just there." I wanted to argue, to tell them they didn't understand, but deep down, I knew they did. And yet, despite all this, I held on to a fragile hope that one day Jessica would slip, her charm would crack, and my family would see her for who she really was. That hope, stubborn as it was, became the lens through which I watched her. Every manipulative smile, every casual lie, every public humiliation, waiting for the day it would all blow up in her perfect little world. That day, I would learn, came sooner than I expected. By the time I hit high school, I had learned the subtle art of disappearing in my own home. I was quiet, diligent, always careful not to give Mom or Dad a reason to compare me unfavorably to Jessica. Meanwhile, she walked through life with a sense of entitlement, leaving chaos in her wake and somehow convincing everyone it wasn't her fault. One memory that still makes my stomach turn happened during 8th grade. Our school had a science fair, and I spent weeks building a miniature model of the solar system with working LEDs and a tiny motor that made the planets spin. I was proud, maybe too proud, and that pride became my first real vulnerability. Jessica had helped me set up the display the morning of the fair. Mom hovered nearby, nodding at Jessica as if she were supervising the event. I noticed her whispering, then saw her sly grin as she knocked the motor's wiring loose, just enough that the planets wouldn't spin. When I realized, it was too late. The model failed in front of the judges. Jessica, of course, ran to Mom immediately. "Lily's being dramatic again. She wasn't careful," she said sweetly, batting her eyelashes. Mom's frown was mild, like a gentle correction. "Next time, honey, maybe double-check your work," she said. I had to stand there and accept it, while Jessica received a consolation "good try" sticker, and my peers murmured sympathy for her effort. It wasn't just small school projects. She had a way of turning every situation into a personal victory. In 10th grade, she convinced Dad to let her borrow my car for a weekend trip, then returned it with a scratch on the bumper, claiming it had happened in the parking lot of a grocery store and somehow painting me as careless. When I protested, Dad simply shook his head. "You need to be more responsible, Lily." Jessica smiled that smug smile, like she'd just won the lottery. Even at family gatherings, Jessica thrived on subtle humiliation. At Thanksgiving one year, she poured cranberry sauce on my lap during dinner. An accident, she claimed, then told everyone I had clumsy hands. Mom laughed politely, and I forced myself to laugh too. I had no defense. That was Jessica's superpower, turning cruelty into charm. The one place I thought I could shine, college, wasn't immune. When I got accepted to a prestigious internship, Jessica accidentally leaked my start date to Mom, who then insisted Jessica should also attend a similar program so she doesn't feel left out. Jessica smiled innocently, and suddenly, my achievement was reframed as something to include her in. Every victory of mine became a shared event, or a competition I hadn't signed up for. Yet, despite all the humiliation, I clung to one thought. Maybe one day, her mask would slip. And when it did, I wouldn't be the one gasping in shock. I would be the one standing firm, finally seen. That day, I would realize, started with a family vacation we all thought would be harmless. It was the summer after my senior year of college. Mom and Dad had insisted on a family bonding trip to the Outer Banks in North Carolina. I had my reservations. Years of watching Jessica dominate every family event had made me wary, but I agreed, hoping at least the ocean air would soothe my nerves. From the moment we arrived, Jessica was in her element. She strutted along the beach like she owned it, effortlessly charming the rental house owner and even the neighbors. I lugged our bags, set up the tents, and organized meals, all while Jessica lounged on the deck, snapping photos to post online with captions like, "Family vacation goals, smiley face." The first sign of real trouble came on the second night. Dad had asked us to clean up after dinner. I was scrubbing the grill when I heard Jessica's high-pitched scream. I rushed over to see her pointing at the sand dramatically. "Lily, you're ruining everything! Look at this mess!" I blinked. The mess was a small pile of sand around a sandcastle I had started for the younger cousins. Jessica had kicked over half of it before calling me out. Mom, of course, scolded me lightly for not supervising better, while Jessica clutched her phone, pretending to cry. I wanted to shout, but something in me snapped instead. I walked away, leaving her theatrics to play out. That night, in the cramped beach house bedroom, I remembered all the times Jessica had humiliated me in front of friends, teachers, and family. This vacation felt like the same pattern amplified. Her charm drawing attention, her cruelty hidden behind innocence, and me, always me, left to endure it silently. The next morning, things escalated. We decided on a small boat tour. Mom and Dad handed Jessica the camera to take photos, naturally. I watched as she deliberately excluded me from every shot, angling the camera so I was just a blurred background figure. Later, she whispered to my parents, "I think Lily was complaining too much. Maybe she shouldn't come next time." Mom only laughed nervously, and Dad nodded absently. But the turning point came unexpectedly. On the third day, the rental house owner confronted us. Apparently, Jessica had borrowed and broken several of the neighbors' beach chairs, claiming they were free for use. When the owner demanded payment, Jessica tried to charm her way out, but her smugness backfired this time. The owner wasn't buying it, and suddenly, Mom and Dad were face to face with consequences for letting Jessica act unchecked. I watched, a mixture of vindication and anxiety swelling inside me as they realized what I had been saying for years. Jessica's behavior wasn't harmless. It was manipulative, cruel, and entitled, and they had enabled it. For the first time, they saw her not as their perfect child, but as someone who would gladly burn bridges if it suited her. That night, the house was tense. Jessica sulked, realizing that her perfect image had been cracked. Mom whispered, maybe we've been too lenient with her," while Dad simply shook his head, staring at Jessica with a mix of disbelief and guilt. I didn't gloat. I just sat quietly, letting the satisfaction settle in. I had been right all along. But even as the tension thickened, I couldn't predict the real fallout. what Jessica would do when she realized the family she had manipulated was finally turning on her. That was yet to come. The morning after the boat incident, the atmosphere in the house was tense in a way I'd never experienced before. Jessica had woken up late, makeup smudged from a frustrated night of sulking, and immediately tried to charm her way back into our parents' good graces. But for the first time, it didn't work. "Jessica, we need to talk about the neighbor's chairs," Dad said, his voice unusually firm. Mom stayed quiet, looking from him to Jessica as if weighing her words carefully. Jessica tried to smile, to flirt, to laugh it off, but nothing landed. It's not a big deal. We can just pay for them, okay? Lily was exaggerating," she said, tossing a glance at me that was equal parts irritation and calculation. I shook my head. "No, Mom, Dad, this isn't just about the chairs. This is everything. Remember the science fair, the car, Thanksgiving? Every time you think it's an accident, it's her manipulating someone so she can look good." Jessica's eyes went wide, and I could see her mind racing, looking for the angle that always worked. But this time, there was none. Mom's lips pressed together, Dad's jaw was tight, and even Jessica's loyal younger cousins looked uncertain. The breaking point came that afternoon at the beach. Jessica, frustrated and desperate for attention, decided to humiliate me publicly. She pushed me into the shallow surf, laughing, and encouraged the younger cousins to join. But she underestimated the tides. A rogue wave caught her too, knocking her into the water and pulling her into the deeper surf. Panic set in immediately. I dove in without hesitation. My arms found hers, and I pulled her back to safety while the neighbors and other tourists watched. Jessica sputtered, gasping, and for the first time, she wasn't in control. The confident mask had slipped, replaced by genuine fear. Later, in the kitchen, Mom and Dad cornered her about everything: the chairs, the lies, the constant manipulation. Jessica tried to argue, tried to spin the story like she always had, but the evidence was overwhelming. Emails, messages, eyewitness accounts from the boat tour, my own calm but detailed recounting of years of sabotage, all of it left her flailing. You're just jealous of me," she screamed at me, her voice breaking. "I've never been jealous of you, Jessica," I said quietly, meeting her gaze. "I've just wanted you to be honest, and for you to stop hurting everyone else along the way." The house was silent after that. Even Mom, always so quick to protect Jessica, seemed shaken. She sat down at the table, burying her face in her hands. Dad simply shook his head, muttering something about not seeing this coming. For the first time in my life, I felt a mixture of relief and unease. Justice had been served, yes, but now the family I loved was fractured, and the question remained, what would I do next? The days after the Outer Banks disaster were quiet, almost too quiet. Jessica stayed in her room, scrolling through her phone, occasionally shouting at her reflection in the mirror. Mom and Dad hovered, still processing the truth they had long refused to see. And I was finally allowed to breathe. Sitting on the porch one evening, watching the sunset turn the ocean gold, I reflected on everything. Years of being overlooked, humiliated, and dismissed. The science fair, Thanksgiving, college, every time Jessica's manipulations had left me invisible. And yet, here I was, finally seen. Mom approached, hesitantly. "Lily, I'm so sorry," she said. We didn't realize how much her words stumbled, unsure, but the sincerity was there." Dad nodded beside her, looking older, tired, chastened. "You were right about her, Lily. We were blind." I wanted to say it's okay, to hug them, to forgive them, but a part of me hesitated. Years of dismissal aren't easily erased by apologies, no matter how heartfelt. I wanted validation, yes, but I also wanted boundaries, the space to protect myself. And then there was Jessica. She had finally revealed her true self to everyone. She was angry, cornered, and vulnerable, but also dangerous in ways she hadn't been when we were younger. Forgiving her felt impossible. She had built a lifetime of deception and cruelty, and I wasn't sure I could step into the role of someone who lets that go without consequence. So I made a choice. I wouldn't hold a grudge, but I wouldn't let her hurt me anymore either. I set boundaries, calmly and firmly. I would maintain a relationship with my family, but Jessica's manipulations would no longer dictate my life. If she wanted to redeem herself, it would be on her terms, not mine. That evening, I walked along the beach alone. The sand was cool beneath my feet, the waves rhythmic and forgiving. For the first time in years, I felt free, not because Jessica had been exposed, but because I had finally reclaimed my own voice. I realized the truth of it. Justice is sweet, but peace is sweeter. I could let go of anger, but I would not forget. I could love my family, but I would protect my heart. And I could finally live as myself, unapologetically. Some people never learn. Some people always get away with cruelty. But sometimes, if you wait long enough, if you watch patiently, if you stand firm, you can survive, you can be seen, and you can choose the life you deserve. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I smiled. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't triumph over Jessica. It was something quieter, stronger. Me, finally unshaken and free. It's been 3 years since that vacation. Jessica still tries her old charm on distant relatives, but I've learned to smile politely and step aside. Mom and Dad have softened. They're more aware now, more careful, but I no longer rely on their approval. I've built my own life, a career I love, friends who see me, and boundaries that keep toxic behavior at bay. Jessica's manipulations still surface occasionally, but they no longer control me or my happiness. Sometimes I think about forgiveness. Maybe one day I'll offer it fully. But for now, I'm content simply with distance, clarity, and peace. I finally understand. Being right doesn't mean winning over everyone. It means winning yourself. And that, I think, is enough. If you liked the video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.